everybody. Welcome back to the Fusion Cast. We've had a little bit of a hiatus. We have a special episode today that's probably going to end up both in the Fusion playlist and also in the Ceph Easy playlist, talking about some of the cool new features that were announced and are now available or will be available in a few days on IBM Storage Ceph version 7.1. So happy to be joined or rejoined today by Marcel Hergaarden. Marcel, thanks for coming back on the pod. And thanks for taking us through the updates. So this is a big release. There's a lot of stuff that is new. There's a few things that had been in tech preview and are now generally available, or again, will be generally available on Friday, I guess. So it's pretty exciting stuff. I know we've got a graphic that sort of shows them. So I'm going to throw that up on the screen. Let's just talk through them and talk a little bit about each one and maybe emphasize, some of the use cases that it applies to, some of the customer value props. So let us do that. All right. And again, Marcel, thanks for taking the time. I know it's a little bit late where you are. So.
Yeah, and thank you for having me. I really enjoy being on your video. So.
Okay, so let's start with start at the top left and work our way down. So a bunch of things to talk about. So I'll let you kind of drive and I'll interject some questions along the way. So fire away.
Sounds like a plan. So the biggest news here is that IBM Storage Ceph 7.1, which is to be released on June 14, is the first true unified storage release. And with that, I mean that IBM now supports file, block, and object use cases, storage use cases. And this enables our clients for new type of use cases, as per example, that NVMe over TCP that now allows clients to use IBM Storage Ceph for VMware storage, for instance. Now you may wonder what's so special about that, but the block storage is not new for Ceph. That's already there since ages, since 2012. It was already there, and it has been used in the context of OpenStack also as block driver. So the Cinder driver. So that's not really something new. But the big difference here is that was always consumed by a Linux driver, which is default part of the Linux kernel, and that made it possible to interact with block storage. Now, imagine yourself not having a Linux host like VMware or something else, and then you could not connect to that block storage because you didn't have that Linux kernel driver embedded. So this is what comes along now. That's NVMe over TCP, which allows non-Linux hosts like VMware is to access Ceph block storage, and that in a similar way of performance, so without loss of performance compared to the native RBD driver. So it's really a nice addition, so that we now can also use this in other context and decouple VMware compute from VMware storage, so that you can scale that independently, which can be very interesting for clients who want to scale their storage but don't want to scale compute because of license cost, for instance.
Yeah, that's obviously a much more important issue nowadays than it had been in the past. So that's a great feature now to give people that flexibility.
Yeah, and this is a unified solution, and that means that you still also have object and file storage. So imagine yourself running a VM on that block storage of Ceph. Then in your application, there may be also need for other type of storage like object storage or file, and you have all this in a unified solution coming from one single solution platform. So that's really a nice benefit. Now, similar story with file storage. Cephfs stands for Ceph File System. There was also in the same way clients access that file system with the kernel driver that's default of present in a Linux kernel. And that means that other systems than Linux could not access Cephfs. And now you can by using NFS version 4.1 or version 3. And there is also like Kerberos support, so that you can have authentication, connection with LDAP, Active Directory, these kind of things. And this allows other systems, non-Linux systems, also to interact with the Ceph file system. And that's also GA in this release, actually. Now, moving on to the Rados Gateway on the left bottom of the slide. There are some new features here. First of all, the archive zone has now general availability. Now you may wonder, what's an archive zone? So this is all about object storage, and you can replicate across multiple sites. And in addition to that, you can also have an archive zone. Now, that archive zone also keeps copies of the replicated objects, but then from each and every version, And that allows you to recover in case of in case of a virus attack or bad things happening like that. You will have an immutable copy on your archive zone that can be restored to the production zone easily. So that's also a protection in a form of malware. So if that would happen, then you always have your archive zone where you have immutable objects that are read-only and can be restored into production zone instantly. And we can do that on a granular way, actually, in a bucket granular way. And users can also restore themselves. So that's also a nice.
And this continues to be, Ceph continues to be a very high fidelity adherence to the S3 standard too, right? So anywhere S3 is relevant or S3 is necessary, Ceph fully supports the S3 standard, right?
Absolutely, and not only that's not only the S3 API that the like the object interface as such, but also surrounding functionality like IAM authentication, server-side encryption, those kind of typical things that you would want to have to elevate rights, user rights in certain applications if you need to. Those are typical functionalities that live in Amazon AWS, and you have the same also available in IBM Storage Ceph. So that's that high fidelity, not only limited to the object API as such, but also functionalities that surround that API and that are required by applications sometimes. And that makes it possible to easily lift and shift applications from public cloud to on-prem and vice versa, whatever the business requires.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, thanks for that clarification.
And then continuing, like the supported use cases of VMware Block Storage is one of our headliners with this release. Then also general purpose file sharing, because now you have that NFS vehicle on top of CephFS allows actually clients to use CephFS for multiple purposes. For instance, file sharing as a service. IBM Cloud regional file service is also leveraging CephFS. And then you can also use this for AIML workloads like Data Lakehouse. Data Lakehouse is a marriage of data warehouse and a data lake, and that's what we call Data Lakehouse. Literally structured data and unstructured data in one solution, and replicatable snapshots. You can create those kind of things, which makes it very suitable for analytics applications, actually. And not limited to Watson X data, but also for other AIML applications that actually require S3, S3 Select, S3A, Parquet interfacing, those kind of things. That's where it's highly suitable.
Sorry, as I mute. Okay, so let's drill into. Well, actually, let me let's finish out the dashboard because I know there's some enhancements to the user experience as well. Let's talk about those, and then maybe we'll dive a little deeper on a couple of these.
Yeah, okay. So there are indeed some new functionalities in the dashboard and management. A very important one is the Rados Gateway deployment. Rados Gateway is the client interface where clients interact with S3 connectivity against a Ceph cluster. And that's a software component, and that needs to be installed on top of IBM Storage Ceph. Mm-hmm. And in the past, that was really, you had to do a lot of command line interactions, and now this has completely been automated by Ceph ADM. You can do the full bootstrapping of that service for a single site and for multi-site deployments easily from within Ceph ADM, the management interface.
Nice.
Now, back to the dashboard. The UI dashboard has also a lot of new functionality. For instance, monitoring of that NFS functionality. And we have NFS on top of CephFS, but also on top of the object gateway. Mm-hmm. And you can see all those kind of things in the dashboard UI, like utilization metrics, the status of the service, how the service is doing, if everything is up or down or whatever. Mm-hmm. The exports of shares, and you can set alarms for the status and rate limiting. So the monitoring you can do is the utilization capacity, mm-hmm. I/O usage, and you can even see the connected clients and IP addresses of them. Mm-hmm. And for the RGW bucket policy interaction, there are also new capabilities now to do that from within the UI. So you can set permissions that you can apply to a bucket, and that goes then also to all the objects inside a bucket. Mm-hmm. It's a bucket policy, and it's a resource-based policy that you can use to grant access permissions to buckets and users, actually.
Cool.
available from the dashboard right now, also labeled performance counters per user or per bucket. And this is actually very handy when you want to do some troubleshooting or charge back or those kind of things. And then you can get a lot of information like the number of puts, gets, statistics of buckets, the number of deletes and listings. These kind of things you can filter out and make visible actually right now in an easy way.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then the hardware monitoring is also something new here. And this allows actually the software to dive into the status of the hardware so that you can light LEDs on the chassis or on the drives, and you can perform firmware upgrades of your hardware from within the IBM Storage Ceph software from UI perspective. You can manage underlying nodes, you can switch them on off or do reboots or power cycles. And then you can identify the type of hardware model, the hardware status, whether it's healthy or unhealthy, if it requires attention. And the high-level hardware insight is now available from the landing page on the dashboard UI. So that's really a handy feature to have.
Yeah, there was also something I saw. We're supporting an Intel on-chip accelerator capability now. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. That's Intel QAT, and that stands for Intel Quick Assist. That's the technology that offloads typical processes from the CPU. And that's like compression, encryption, but also the checksumming that Ceph does. Ceph uses checksums in the internals. And those kind of processes can be typically offloaded to that Intel QAT, which is on Intel Xeon processors nowadays. And that actually allows you to implement compression and encryption on a Rados gateway without any cost to the CPU performance, because that's now offloaded to that QAT, Quick Assist technology, and that allows the CPU to focus on its bare functionality, what it's supposed to do, and not those side tasks like encryption and compression and checksumming. That's now offloaded. So
it's like a reduction in the CPU tax.
Exactly. Right. That's the right wording.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a couple of things I wanted to just kind of dive into a little deeper. One of them is multi-site replication. So can you talk a little bit more specifically about what this is and where you see the applicability for this in terms of the customer use cases?
Yeah, absolutely. Multi-site replication has been out there already for a long time, and now it has more announcements. The functionality is actually that you have a object store on one location, and then you can replicate those objects to another location, to a co-location or a branch office or things like that. And then you can have the same data available on both sides in an active manner. So suppose you have two offices or two locations, then you can have the same data available on both locations and people can interact with that same data. Replication happens on Rados gateway level. On the slide, you see the clusters, which are distinct clusters on distinct locations. And the Rados gateway on top, that's where the replication takes place. Now, what's new in this release is that you can actually do that on a bucket granular level. So you can decide which bucket you want to replicate where, and that can be bidirectional, so to both locations. And this can be very interesting if you have a branch office or if you have a co-office that only requires access to specific data, and data from that location needs to be replicated back to the headquarters, for instance. But you could also imagine if you have an edge location where you don't need to have the entire set of data, but only a subset relevant for that location. And I always take an example of a big supermarket chain. You have supermarkets in different locations, and specifically for that location, you have specific data, and you can do that on a bucket granular level. You can have that replication. Remember, we spoke about Archive Zone, which does a similar thing, but then replicates objects and makes them immutable also. So you can also incorporate that in this functionality. Yeah. So there's a lot of capabilities here, and probably way too much to dive into.
Yeah, I just thought this was a really interesting feature because it really speaks to the, advanced DR capabilities that Ceph has always had, and now they're getting even better, and the ability to now have these policies more granular and sort of tiered in a way, just enhances the flexibility even more. So I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. And if folks want to know more, we can have deep dives on this available too. So yeah, that's
Cool. Okay. So let's see. Are there any other things you wanted to? I think we kind of hit the highlights. The purpose was not, a technical deep dive, but really give people a broad overview of the new capabilities. Again, some of which have been around in tech preview for a little while, but now they're, GA and fully supported for broader distribution. Any other closing thoughts or ideas?
yeah, tech preview. There are also new tech preview features here, and that's actually the integration with VMware vCenter. That's ongoing effort and will be available in the next upcoming release by the end of this year. But it's now in tech preview, so folks can play around with it. And there is also one more thing I would like to mention also is that the NFS functionality on top of Rados Gateway is now also GA, which was tech preview in the past, now full GA. And that allows actually clients to interact with an object store through NFS vehicle. Now, why do you want to need that? Probably there could be that you have a legacy hardware equipment that cannot speak S3 or object, but it can speak NFS, and it can dump data through that NFS interface on your object store. And once it's there, you can access it with S3 or with analytics application that use S3. So there is another connectivity vehicle actually, and now also fully supported. And I just wanted to mention that maybe there are clients who are listening and think, hey, that's something that could be interesting for me. So to highlight that.
Well, and just last kind of parting thought from me is we always use the word hybrid cloud. Everybody uses the word hybrid cloud. I mean, I think how you describe hybrid cloud and how it actually manifests or executes in terms of your technology are often very different, but this is very clearly a truly hybrid cloud software-defined storage solution because it runs on cloud, public cloud, private cloud, on-prem. The connectivity exists, the DR exists, the replication, the policy engine across all distribution and deployment models is very robust and very consistent with their user experience. So I think it's hybrid cloud in its purest form almost.
Yeah, true, and also remind that it's a software-defined solution. And we do offer hardware capabilities with those ready nodes, but in essence, it's a software-defined solution, and that means that it can literally run everywhere. And if you are on par with these services like with Amazon AWS, where you probably have workloads running and you want to lift and shift them, then you want to have the same functionality. Exactly the same on-prem, so that you don't have to alter your applications or the way that those applications interact with the infrastructure. So that's all similar, and that makes it very much hybrid cloud functional.
Very cool, very cool. Well, Marcel, this is great. Another great release. You guys have been hitting it out of the park ever since you came on board to IBM. So this is another major release. So great work. Where can people go to learn more about it? Obviously, the public website. Is there any other? I know you've got a blog. I'll put a link to your blog on the screen here somewhere so people can get to that.
Please do. Then all the information is in that blog, and there is a lot of detail there so that you can read this whole story back and find out more details. And then, of course, we have the official IBM website and the data sheet and those kind of things. Cool. And happy to help.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Marcel, thanks again. Really appreciate your time. Great discussion. Let's stay in touch, and as new stuff rolls out and we have new customer experiences, we'll share them with everyone. Thanks for watching. We'll be back again with another episode soon. And with that, we'll sign off. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thanks.